Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today on the Skincarma Pod, I want to explore the trickiest but most essential of all skincare, sunscreen. And to do it justice, I needed an expert, someone who's mastered the art of making sunscreens. John Cressity, co founder of the Skin Bar, is just the man to take us inside the formulation lab to unpack what really goes into making sunscreen products. With a background in cosmetic science and a deep expertise in sun protection technologies, John has made it his mission to educate consumers and brands about the vital role sunscreens play in long-term skin health. At the Skin Bar, he leads product development with a keen focus on innovative SPF formulations that merge efficacy with elegance, ensuring that this vital protection doesn't just work, it feels good too. After all, the number one reason consumers give for not wearing sunscreen every day is that they don't like how it feels on their face. That's apparently more important than protection from skin cancer and photo damage, the leading cause of the visible signs of aging. I can't think of a topic that I want to talk about more and have been anticipating this conversation with John for weeks. Let's do this. Let's talk to John. John, hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome to the Skin Karma Pod.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you asking me to join. I think this is great.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you. I could wonk out all day on sunscreens with you, but we'll take maybe a half an hour or so.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's see
That
how
sounds
much
good to
see how
me.
much we can cram into a half an hour. But
There you go.
before we get into everything that goes into the formulation of a sunscreen, I'd love to hear about you and have you share with the listeners who you are, where you're from, and how you got into this business.
Absolutely. Quick story, because that could take 30 minutes. I actually grew up in North Jersey and went to my family had a pharmacy, and I grew up in a pharmacy. Like we literally
Wow.
lived upstairs from my pharmacy my dad built. And a pharmacist started working there, and when I was getting out of in college at the time, she's like, "Wow, my husband works for this company in Fair Lawn, New Jersey called BH Kruger, contract manufacturing company." I'm like, "You know what? I can't do this behind the counter pharmacy stuff. I got a degree in chemistry," and went right to work for them, but started kind of different. I started in the compounding blending part of the company,
Hmm.
and it was a company that made all private label, from moisturizers to aftershaves to lotions to deodorants, fragrances, all kinds of stuff, mostly for private label. And went into manufacturing and worked in that department, and then moved my way actually backwards into the laboratory and then started doing formulating. But I think it really helped me, not just for my college experience as a chemist, but more as like, I know how all the batches go together now and what the chemicals did, how they reacted. So now formulating became a little bit easier for me.
Right. So,
And then for okay.
it's funny to me because I think that I was at L'Oreal for about 7 years working on Kiehl's, and it was
Yes.
always funny to me that all of these products were made in New Jersey.
Yeah, isn't
What
it?
is it like? More beauty products are made in New Jersey probably than any other state in the country.
I think a lot of raw material suppliers in New Jersey. And when
Hmm.
I was there, I worked for, again, from there, and then went to another company that actually did all the L'Oreal Estilo lipsticks
Oh,
at a company,
wow.
and also in Fairlawn.
Uh huh.
Like, we produce quite a bit of them, but all the raw material suppliers are there. It's either New York, New Jersey, mostly manufacturing in New Jersey, but there's some in Chicago and then, of course, California. But Jersey had quite a few big manufacturing companies. I mean, the Revlons of the worlds were there.
Oh,
It's just,
wow.
it's crazy. L'Oreal, like you said, was there. In Clark, quite a bit of them, but I think a lot of the raw material suppliers were there also, so it made it convenient to do manufacturing in Jersey.
Right. Right. They kind of fed into each other, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, what first drew you into focusing so much on sunscreen in your career?
So basically, when I was in Jersey doing manufacturing, I had an opportunity to work with a company. Can I mention company names?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay,
and
with
products.
with Peter Thomas Roth.
Okay.
So I spent 15 years there, but my first 3 years, they were buying private label products from a company in California, and I came on and I was like, "Why are you not doing this here in Jersey or New York where you were?"
Hmm.
And also, they were just June Jacobs was the owner, of course, and Peter Thomas Roth. And June and I hit it off. And it was like, she's like, "We have all these acne products and treatments, but what do you know about sunscreens? We don't have any." I'm
Hmm.
like, "Well, June, we could definitely make sunscreens." And Peter Thomas Roth, you need sunscreens because you're trying to treat acne, you're trying to worry about wrinkles and this, and you have no sunscreens.
Right.
So at the time, this was in the early 2000s, it was, let's do sunscreens, but everything was about chemical sunscreens.
Right.
Easy to apply, no whiteness all over the skin,
Right.
transparent. So that's where I got my forte started there and really introduced into making sunscreens, but again, chemical sunscreens. And once chemical sunscreens grew and grew and grew, and again, easier to formulate, great for emulsions. They're transparent, so they don't leave that chocolate film on the skin.
Yeah.
But we started experimenting with titanium dioxide and zinc oxide.
Hmm. The two
Back
mineral
in the day,
filters.
yes, and they are true mineral filters. They're actually, people like, "Oh, I only want something organic." But if you look at titanium and zinc oxide, they're actually inorganic, are the technical terms for those two sunscreens. But back in the day when you formulated with those, they were very it was a powder. And then
Hmm.
you think about back in the day, the lifeguards that used to put
Oh,
sunscreen
totally.
over their
Yeah.
nose,
Yeah.
and it was white, and that was zinc oxide, almost like diaper rash ointment, because that's the way zinc oxide was. So it was always white. So people didn't really like that very chalky white feel of zinc and titanium during that time. But so that's why people leaned toward chemical sunscreens. And then, of course, technology as it started to roll out over the years, they started experimenting with particle sizes of zinc oxide
Hmm.
and titanium and making the particles so much finer, and then mixing them with certain ingredients and chemicals. You were able to get almost a translucent at the time,
Hmm.
not quite transparent like some of the brands that are out there today, like the zinc clears. It's unbelievable, but we don't have to sit there and grind the titanium and zinc into a base. And you know, when you made lipsticks, you would take the pigments and grind it into castor oil, and they do with roller mills, and they'd
Right.
make the paste and have that was your color base. That's what we used to do with zinc and titanium, but it was still
Huh.
white. So it's great. A lot of the suppliers now manufacture dispersions of zinc and titanium in like a 40 to 60% paste. It looks like paint. It's the weirdest thing. You open this bucket and it looks like thick paint. But then when you mess around with it and tweak the formulas, you could have a 20% zinc oxide load in a formula and the product be crystal clear.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
it's really, really neat how they've changed the industry. And then, of course, everybody started talking about nanoparticles. Oh, your titanium's too fine, or your zinc oxide's too fine. So now you have nanoparticles, and we don't allow nanoparticles. So it became a big thing of everybody was worried about particle sizes of titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. But it's the way to go now because they can be clear,
Yeah.
and the fact that chemical sunscreens are starting to become an issue. Some of them are being banned. Some of the benzophenones are not allowed. And then you know what's going on in Hawaii, California,
Right.
with the whole reef, and the chemical sunscreens are destroying the reef and whatever. But it's
What
like
are
it.
the chemical filters are that kind of get the bad rap now?
So the big one, it's called OMC, but
Okay.
it's octamethoxycinnamate. That's one of them.
Okay.
Um, the other ones that are benzophenones, and they cause some issues on the skin, apparently. But they also they're harder to formulate with, but bad for the environment. The same with another one, which is octosalicylate,
Oh, right.
which is
Yes.
another chemical sunscreen. There's like 4 or 5 major chemical sunscreens, and then there's homomethyl salicylate and octocrylene, but those are the ones, they're very difficult to remove. Like octocrylene becomes almost like a film former, and now you have a problem because you can't get it off things. So that's where I think the whole reef thing, they start to have a problem. So people are pushing away from the chemical sunscreens and going to these filters, the titanium and zinc, which when you really think about it,
Hmm.
the chemical sunscreens, nobody reads labels, of course, and it says on it, apply at least 30 minutes prior to exposure, because the chemical sunscreens have to get absorbed onto the top layers of the skin, and then they absorb the UV filters. That's how they basically work.
Right.
When you flip flop it and you have a really nice face cream, you really don't want to absorb extra UV and heat. You want to reflect it. So that's why makeup is an easy thing. But titanium and zinc, you could literally put it on, go outside, and it reflects the light. So the light bounces off it and shoots back out. So you don't get as much heat. So it's more of like a reflective type of thing and forms a little barrier.
And there really is no absorption involved with mineral filters, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. With titanium and zinc, it's more on the outer portion of the skin and it just reflects the light off. It's not as much absorbing like the chemical screens are made to absorb ultraviolet filters and light. But,
Right.
you know, then you have the problem with another big filter that came in avobenzone,
Oh,
which is
right.
really
That's been around a long time.
yeah, quite a long time. They're having problems with that one, and that's a UVA absorber.
Mm.
But you have to put, and you can only use a certain level, so you can't get the old broad spectrum claim that people were totally looking for. And now titanium and zinc, zinc alone is a broad spectrum. It covers the UVA and UVB spectrum, so you get a broad spectrum coverage just using zinc oxide alone and nothing else, which makes it really more appealing to the parent because they can put the sunscreen on the kids right at the pool or at the beach,
Yeah.
and they don't have to worry about reactions with chemical sunscreens on the skin.
And we don't have to worry so much anymore because the you're saying that the what is it, micronized zinc, that
Yeah,
it's a smaller molecule, so we're not worried so much anymore about that white film.
right. The particle size is smaller, so you when light travels through it, you don't see those little platelets. They make them finer. But you could get to the point where the platelets are way, way too small, and that's where they start talking about micro size and nanoparticles because they're really, really too fine, and then they worry about getting absorbed, inhaled. So they're keeping where they need to be with the titanium and zinc, not being nanoparticles, but micronized enough that you get that nice little transparent effect and not that chalky white effect on the skin. And you could get really high SPFs with them, which is great.
So if that's the case, why formulate? We're going to get into the FDA and all of that and the differences between, sunscreen filters and the rest of the world in here. But why formulate with anything besides zinc?
Um, Zinc oxide alone, one, it's not easy to formulate with, so you have to know what you're
Uh,
doing.
okay.
But if you combine zinc oxide with titanium dioxide, those two combination work really well. And then you get the water resistant properties at the same time using them both. So you
Hmm.
get water resistant, you get broad spectrum, and then you get the more reflection of both of them, and they work in tandem. So you can make a nice sunscreen with the two of them and not deal again. People are getting away from just formulating with chemical sunscreens. The reason chemical sunscreens are still out there,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
they're cheaper to make. They're cheap. Chemical sunscreens, probably the ingredients cost half the price of the titanium and zinc dispersions. So you have
Wow.
a huge, huge difference. And a former company I worked for, I had the ability to make titanium zinc oxide formulas. They couldn't afford them.
Oh,
They
I
were
didn't.
like, "They're too much money. We're in Walmart. We gotta sell it for 9.99 or 12.99." So you went with the chemical sunscreens that are, most of the chemical sunscreens are under $15 a kilo.
Yeah.
Yes, there's combinations, 6% of this, 3% of that, where titanium and zinc might be $60, $70 a kilo. but it's the benefit of that. And when you mix all the chemical sunscreens, you're not just putting in 3, 4% of one. It's like seven of one, six of another, eight of another one. You got like 20 something percent of chemical sunscreens, mostly liquids that now you're trying to formulate and emulsify and
Hmm.
keep them in the system. And then you got to worry about stability and testing. So it's just there just because zinc oxide has come such a long way
Yeah.
and titanium dioxide, they're they're just a great filters to work with.
Can I ask you, there are very few, like when I look at a mineral sunscreen product, and I have
Mhm.
probably 30 sunscreens to choose from every morning. When I look at my
Right.
mineral sunscreens, there are very few that say 100% mineral sunscreen. What is the difference between a 100% mineral sunscreen and a mineral sunscreen?
There's it's really there isn't. If it's a mineral sunscreen, it's a mineral sunscreen. I
Hmm.
think people use that term 100% mineral sunscreen because then they're thinking, "Oh, there's no chemicals in there." So I'm using straight mineral. But if I tell you, "Hey, here's a mineral sunscreen, Carmine, and here's one that's 100% mineral sunscreen," they're both the same. They're
Hmm.
both mineral sunscreens unless one is a mineral sunscreen but still uses some of the other
Chemical
chemical
filters.
yeah, in them, but normally, if that label bottle says mineral sunscreen, it's a mineral sunscreen.
And what about fillers that help with texture? That's kind of out there, and I always wonder what that means.
You might saying like no fillers on labels or
Yeah.
yeah,
I have seen brands position their sunscreen as 100% mineral sunscreen and not having any fillers, any chemical fillers. Well, like, I'm always
that's
confused about that. That's just
okay,
marketing
so
spin.
yeah, it's marketing, but they're basically again saying, look, this is 100% mineral sunscreen. There's no other fillers in there, chemical fillers that are helping the sunscreen work and increasing the SPF where people used to use that. But it's more marketing. It's like in Europe, you have to be careful if you say, with labels, same way. If you say does not contain oxybenzone or does not contain benzophenone, that's illegal in Europe. You can't say does not contain this and that.
Hmm.
Where in US, people say a lot of things like no parabens, no this and that. And in Europe, it's really a little difficult. So people use it as like just no chemical fillers, they say, and make it simple instead of calling out specific ingredients.
Okay, so you mentioned Europe, and I have an awareness about sunscreens, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't. What is the deal with the FDA regulations and these incredibly innovative sunscreens that come out of K Beauty and Japan and Europe and even Australia, and we're stuck with what?
Just so basically a lot of them. So two things. One, in Europe, in Canada, sunscreens are not regulated as drugs.
Oh.
They're not only in US, they're an over-the-counter OTC product regulated by the FDA. So you have to follow that monograph and say, okay, I'm only allowed to use, like I'll just say avibenzone. You
Hmm.
can't use more than 3%. That's your max. You put in 6% avibenzone, it's an illegal drug. You put in 25% of like homomethyl or it's an illegal drug. So in Europe, they don't have that. They don't even claim it on the label. So if you were in Europe and you bought a sunscreen, on the back, it doesn't say active ingredients. It
Mm.
just lists all the ingredients on the label,
Hmm.
and they're allowed to use a lot more of some ingredients that we can't. And there's also other chemicals that are allowed in Europe that are combined with sunscreens, where in US, certain things are not allowed to be mixed with sunscreens. And in the monographs that the FDA puts out is the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 21 is the one.
Hmm.
And you go in there and you can search on the internet, you look at sunscreen, says this combination is not allowed. This is illegal. Like you can't take zinc oxide with certain chemical sunscreens here, but there they could do almost anything because it's just like if I made you a face cream, I could put
Right.
anything I want on it and don't claim it. But in US, if you say anything about SPF or sunscreen and put filters, You have to claim them, then it becomes a drug, and then the labeling and the pricing and then the testing becomes very different than in Europe.
So is these FDA regulations, and I'm familiar with the monograph because I write packaging copy, right? And so
Right.
when I
So
work
you
on a
know, yeah,
sunscreen, I know
yeah,
that I have to draw, verbatim text that I can use on the
exactly.
package.
That
Do-
drug facts
yeah.
box.
Do you think that the FDA regulations hinder anything, or are we fine the way things are?
I well, I think it hinders a little bit because I mean, when you go back and look at the monograph, when was the last time the FDA rewrote the monograph for sunscreens? The TFM, 10th final monograph, I think 1972.
Right.
And they've been working on it and working on it, and then in 2021 they're like, okay, we're going to revise the final monograph, and then 2 years later, okay, I think we have a final revision.
Hmm.
Oh, but wait, so I think why it's hindering is companies want to formulate some products, but then so say you and I formulate a product and it cost us just for validations 100 grand, and next year, okay, we have the final monograph, and we're like, uh-oh, we just made a sunscreen that's not even allowed now.
Oh,
So it's like everybody's waiting, waiting, waiting for that final, final, final monograph to come out. So they're kind of like a little hesitant about messing around, or trying to come out with other combinations where, again, people are just, hey, we'll stick with zinc oxide, titanium oxide, use some of the other chemical filters on their own for cost reasons. But what is this final monograph going to look like? And what is even like SPF 100? Is
right.
that even allowed? I mean, what's the difference between an SPF 50 and 100? There really
There,
isn't. I mean,
there
once you
isn't,
get over
right? Like
30, 40,
we know that, at
once
least
you
I
get over
know
40, yeah,
that
40 is like it.
it's what it protects against 98% of UV rays.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Like,
SPF 30, 30 times your normal. I'm like, so you'd have to be in the sun for 15 hours straight, which can't anyway, because it doesn't stay out that long. So
there's no
a
sun.
50,
Yeah.
a 50 and 100 is like, why? So, it was like somebody like Blue Lizard has a 50 plus and 100 and then Neutrogena in them, but
Yeah.
they're all, once that monograph comes out and finalizes, I don't think they're gonna be able to say it anymore. I think they're gonna have to go back to it's a max 50, and people don't want to spend the money doing all that extra work yet. So they're leaving it the way it is until the monograph, comes out. Everybody uses 50 plus,
Yeah.
40 plus instead of just saying it's a 40 or it's a 38.
Right.
And you wonder why those numbers are on there too. Some forms come out and say like UV clear SPF 46. They're like, well, why is it 46? So you know why it's a 46? Because companies probably tried to test it as a 50,
And it came in as
and when they got the
46.
test results, it didn't make it. So it was somewhere in the middle. So it probably came out as a 46 or 47, not 50. So they had to put 46. Elta MD is one of the big ones who did that.
Right here, when I was working at Kiehl's, we had a
Yeah.
face cream in a jar, a conventional moisturizer, anti-aging moisturizer, whatever, and then we created an SPF version of the moisturizer, and it came back. We were hoping it would come back as a 25. We were expecting it to come back as SPF 25, and it came back as SPF 23. And so then there was
So
a whole like existential crisis. Do we
yeah,
market this as an SPF 20? And I remember pushing for that same thing. No, go with the 23. This is like Kiehl's is a quirky brand,
yeah,
and it looks like
yeah.
we did everything we could and we got it to a 23,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
And that's where I think most of them came out and started doing that, because it's like, why not maximize what we can instead of sitting there? Because you're right, I've made sunscreens that we thought were going to come out SPF 30 and it came back 18. And like,
How does
why?
that happen? Because there's a lot of controversy right now about these Australian sunscreens, and one in
So
particular that was supposed to be an SPF 30 and came back as a 4.
as a 4,
Yeah.
I mean, in US, that's where people kind of skimp on doing testing. They
Mm,
just do they'll do an in vitro and not in vivo.
okay.
So in vitro, is not on skin. It's done on with the machine and entered. But the only way you can really do a true sunscreen, you have to do at least a 5-person in vivo on the skin. So if they do in vitro and you're up and say, SPF 30, but in vitro comes back and it's like you said, a 5 or a 6.
Hmm.
They're like, what the hell?" And they'll leave things, but you really in US can't do that. You can't skimp on those tests. You have to do X amount of people to come out with that actual number. But how that happens is sometimes you make a sunscreen formula and the other ingredients react with the chemical sunscreens and almost
Ah,
like kind of just take them and almost like make them, they bind them so they're not as effective. And that's why companies like Holstar, Holstar, they've been in the business. They make a couple of ingredients that are actually sunscreen boosters.
mm,
So you can make a sunscreen and say, okay, this combination of zinc oxide should give me a 15, and you put in this ingredient, and now it's a 19 or a 21. So it's messing around with the right ingredients to help boost some of the sunscreens and get the higher levels that you need without trying to just load it with like 30-40% titanium, because then, or zinc, because then it becomes too pasty in a way.
how interesting. And
It
are these
Yeah.
sunscreen booster ingredients? Are they listed in the Inky?
Oh, yeah. They're definitely listening to Inky, and I just drew a blank on the main one, but
Right.
it's, like, driving me crazy, but starts with a letter C, but it's a booster that Hallstar makes, and we've always used it in sunscreens because it actually pushes up your SPF by, like, more than sometimes 15-20%.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a pretty cool thing that they came up with. Covasorb? No. Covacryl? I can't think of it. But we use it because it boosts the sunscreen, and they've done testing. So when you buy the raw material from them, they're like, "Hey, use 3% of this and your sunscreen is gonna go from a 15 to a 25, and you don't have to spend the money on adding more zinc oxide and then worry about getting more white kind of a background on it."
Right, how fascinating. Well,
Yeah.
there's a little formulating secret. I never knew that.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
funny
pretty cool
because
enough to think about that.
I look at, Inkies a lot, and oftentimes on sunscreens I'll look and I'll see it only has 12% zinc oxide in it. How can it be an SPF 30 or an SPF 40
It
when another
it's
one
true.
has, 15% zinc oxide and it's at the same SPF level? So
Yeah,
that's the trick?
yeah, the trick is some of these ingredients that help boost the sunscreens, certain, esters that are in a formula instead of some people just use oils, but
Mhm.
oils won't work with it, but some esters work with those to work really, really well to boost the sunscreen. I think there's a brand I worked actually, it was one of the first sunscreens I developed for this guy. It used to be Fallene. Harry Fallick, he was a doctor and went into started Tizo, Tizo.
Okay.
Sunscreens all over. Um, he's out of Pennsylvania. He has a zinc oxide. It's 20%. It's called Ultra Zinc. It's an SPF 40 and it's crystal clear. And
Wow.
he just added tinted ones, and it's broad spectrum besides with just zinc oxide, no titanium, and came out with a really, really good formula. It's I did one of his first ones back in the day, 20 plus years ago. But back then it was pasty, white, chalky, but it was like, hey, no chemical sunscreens. It's titanium and zinc, but you don't have to deal with the chemicals. So
Yeah.
those were some of the things that were done then. So, but yeah, formulating is that's a big part of it is using ingredients that work to help boost some of these sunscreens.
Interesting. I got to get my hands on that sunscreen, and
Yeah,
I'll drop the link in the show notes.
I'll get you some info, but I'll send you that chemical that's used, the ingredient.
Great, I would appreciate that. Before we move on, I want to before we move on from the FDA and regulations, you and I talked about how the FDA um, sent letters to two brands, Supergoop and Vacation, because they were marketing a sunscreen in a whipped cream or
Aerosol.
whipped mousse
Yep,
aerosol. And so,
yep.
what's the deal with that? Like, it violated the monograph.
So it basically so there's two ways a monograph works. X
Hmm.
amount of sunscreens you put in that make it work, but also delivery systems.
Okay.
So when you do something like that, if you put a sunscreen in a regular tube bottle like you and I use, squeeze out the tube, the
Hmm.
sunscreen's there.
Hmm.
The sunscreens, so that's how it's approved as a monograph in that type of form, the way it could be done. If you incorporate a gas into it. Butane, pentane, anything that's used
Oh.
as an aerosol to react with that product to make it come out into a foam or a mousse, whatever it is, that is not approved because what they're saying is, how do you know that that gas is not going to destroy the sunscreen, react with the sunscreen, cause a problem applying it? So it's not an approved method and it's not approved use to have an aerosol SPF because technically, if you said to me, John, let's make an SPF 50 in aerosol,
Hmm.
we'd have to apply for a new drug application in a way, not as new chemical, but a new delivery system to do it. So it becomes a little bit where and that's where the FDA gets a little bit, they try too much in some areas and then they're so far behind in other areas. But it's like, okay, so if I make it an aerosol, but I take the product and I test it and do everything I do and it gives me the right SPF, why can't I do that? And they'll
Right.
say, well, that's not an approved delivery system. So you could have the right SPF, but it's not approved drug OTC type product and not delivery system in aerosol. It's just there's no monograph for an aerosol SPF and probably to do it. And if we were to make one and do a new drug application, you're talking maybe 2 years and a couple $100,000 to get through every single part of it by the time you validate it and test it.
Hmm.
So that's where it became a problem, but it gives it that nice whipped mousse.
Right.
What I
Right.
think the only way around it is to do like the bag on valves, where the product is inside this
Yes.
bag
Yeah.
and then they pump the air around it. So when you press the trigger or the nozzle or the actuator, it just squeezes so the product comes out, but it doesn't give it that foam. It's because when you get that aerosol foam, how do you know all that sunscreen is dispersed properly in there?
Right.
So that's where it's became a little bit of a problem. Um, I think 3 companies got that letter about that to do it. So I'm sure somebody's gonna either submit it or try to come up with a different system where the all those gases that are used in aerosols do not react with the product. They're just, like, separated from that, actual container.
But
You know, like
then
shave
you
cream.
wouldn't get a foam. Oh,
You wouldn't get
you
a
could
foam,
get a
right.
foam or not
No, because you need something in it to
to
foam. Like, if
aerate
you
it.
do
Right.
edge shave gel,
Right.
when you squeeze it out, it reacts, and then when it hits the environment, those emulsifiers in there bloom, and then you get that nice foam.
Yeah.
That the same with like Barbasol, they're emulsifiers, but it's when it hits that gas and hits the air, it like pops up. But SPFs, nobody's ever tested that to make sure. Hey, when that thing opens up, is it giving me the right coverage? Is it doing it properly? Is the gas destroying the sunscreen? So that's where the FDA and it's yeah, the FDA came out with that letter like all of a sudden. Why are you worried about
Right.
aerosol sunscreens when you can't even get our monograph where we want it to be?
Right. Well, the sad part of that for me, I mean, I completely understand that, the FDA questioning whether a consumer is getting the right disbursement of sunscreen when they use a foam. But,
Right.
I talked in the intro and I talk about this a lot that the number one reason consumers give for not wearing sunscreen is they hate how it feels. And so if a
Correct.
consumer loves using that product and the product tests perfectly fine, like for crying out loud, it's great that a consumer actually loves using a sunscreen product.
Yeah, that's so true because a lot of people don't. You're right. A
Yeah,
lot of people don't use it, whether it's the feel, the texture, the smell. They're like, oh, and so you're right. But the FDA makes it not as easy for people to do things like that. Like, do it, let it go. Don't worry about the FDA coming in and like, oh, we're gonna do this MOCRA and we're gonna charge you $35,000 a year so you could have an OTC license and you have to register every ingredient. Oh, and by the way, tattoo inks they're not you can't do them anymore because the inks are not certified and they're buying them from another country and it's they enforced that the whole MOCRA Act that was done like
yes, yeah,
3 years ago and
yeah,
it's still now they backed off a little bit but all these small contract manufacturers are never going to be able to comply. And that was the fight. It's like, I have a small facility. How am I going to test every single ingredient comes in here? How am I going to make sure it is what it is and go? It put a lot of them out of business. So they kind of, I guess they got a big pushback on this modernization of the Cosmetic Regulatory Act, but it's so like so now it went from this giant push and you had to comply to now they're laxed on it and letting people. I don't know where it is right now. It's real. I haven't heard anything except register your products, but it's
Right.
just it was a way for them to get money, basically.
Yeah. So we also talked a couple of weeks ago about the impact of social media on sunscreen, and TikTok is especially filled with content that promotes untruths about wearing sunscreen, making DIY sunscreen in your kitchen, and
Yeah.
all kinds of wild stuff. What are your thoughts on these trends?
So, I mean, trends are always going to be there, right?
Yeah,
And you can have all these DIYs doing their own things, trying to make a name for themselves. Oh, I could do this and do that. I mean, DIY sunscreen, it's kind of great. You could go to the store and buy zinc oxide diaper rash. You could buy zinc oxide powder on Amazon and you could sit there and mix it with oil and make a paste and put it on. Is it going to protect you? Of course it is, but it's going to look like diaper rash ointment. It's going to be white, pasty. But I think people are just trying to say, oh, this sunscreen works better if you do this or if you do that. But you mentioned it before. That drug facts panel is there for a reason.
yeah,
If you follow the drug facts panel, it tells you how to use it, how to apply, when to reapply, especially like water resistance and whatnot. But I think with all the social media, it's just a way for companies and kids to push themselves out there and say, hey, this is the best sunscreen ever. It's the most transparent. It works like so great and I love it. And don't use anything else. But, you know, if it really comes down to titanium dioxide and zinc oxide sunscreens, whether it's from MD, Blue Lizard, Tizo, Neutrogena, I mean, they still have to use the same ingredient
yeah,
because there's no other ones that are approved. It's just like you went to the store and bought aspirin. It really doesn't matter if you buy aspirin from Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS, aspirin's aspirin.
right.
It's still the same milligram, it's the same ingredient. So it's like I just think that a lot of people with social media just try to do it for themselves to boost brands, but I think it's great because it gives such brand recognition for those brands. And the better you are at social media, the more these kids make money getting paid to promote brands.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so
Yeah.
one last question, kind of in tandem with this, and then we'll do a quick lightning round. If you could leave listeners with one message about sunscreen, something that would change how they view it or use it, what would it be?
Probably the most important lesson is it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're driving your car, going outside, it's a cloudy day. Skin cancer is one of the number one killers of people in this world. And people do not think, oh, it's just because if I'm outside, or oh, my grandmother had skin cancer. Anything with any pigments, you must put on something to protect your skin daily. I don't, like I said, driving your car, if you look at a lot of people, their left arm, because it's hanging out
Yeah,
the window, it's all freckled or that. Women, the back of their hands, you could tell a woman's age. Look at the back of their hands. Put a sunscreen on the back of your hands. Put something on, even if it's light. It doesn't mean you're going to go out there and go out in the sun, but even going out at lunchtime, I think the most important thing is you have to wear some sort of protection daily, just walking out. And again, clouds don't block UV light like people think. UV still goes through clouds and you could still burn on a cloudy day. But again, not saying you're sitting out on the beach or sitting in a park,
right.
but just walking, golfing, the back of ears. You have to, protection to me is the most important thing, no matter what you do, put on something to protect your skin when you're outside, period.
I have a I'm glad you brought up the point about the back of the ears. It wasn't until relatively recently that I was actually applying sunscreen behind my ears. And it was only when I hosted my friend, Dr. Jen Haley. She's a dermatologist in Arizona. And she was saying that the number one place you see skin cancer in men is behind their ears because our hair is short or we shave and it's exposed. And I was like,
Well,
wait, what?
golfers is number one.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of golfers have skin cancer, and where is it? On the back of their ears because we wear ball caps. and their ears are exposed, and they never think of put sunscreen on your face, but keep going,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
your neck. So, yeah, and people are when you're walking out, even if you're walking to the store, it's mostly the back of your neck and your ears, and people just don't think about applying sunscreen. They're like, "Oh, I'm only going for 15 minutes. I'll be okay." I mean, my wife goes out 8:30 in the morning to me walking the dog. She puts on sunscreen
Oh, I
because
love
she's
that.
very fair skinned and wants to make sure. So it's important.
Yeah, me too. I'm super fair skinned and I never go out without sunscreen. And even if for some reason I stay home, like during COVID, I wear sunscreen every day. I have huge windows.
Yeah,
The sun is
I was just gonna
blazing through
say
those
we
windows.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And people don't think it goes through unless you're putting 3M film on every window in your house and blocking UV. It's not happening.
3M film. There you go. I think I need to
Yeah,
put some of that up.
yeah, there you go.
All right, let's do a quick lightning round and then we'll wrap up. So you can answer however you want. Quick, whatever. Personal favorite SPF texture: lotion, stick, gel, spray, the illegal mousse.
Um, Honestly, I think lotion is the best for
Hmm.
me.
Okay,
Lightest, easiest to apply.
yeah. One sunscreen product you enjoy wearing. You can name names if you would like.
Well, honestly, I think because my wife has a spa and sells it, but Elta MD's
Mm.
UV Clear SPF 46 is one of the best. And the cool thing about it, they put a little bit of a greenish blue tint. So when I put it on, it makes my skin gets rid of all the redness at the same time.
The new one is actually it's right here. Isn't that crazy? I have it right here.
Oh, look at you. That's that's a good one. That
Completely unintentional, but there it is.
that's
And I'm
crazy.
actually wearing this. I realized this morning when you brought it up. I'm wearing the Elta MD 46. Um,
Is that the tinted or has the little greenish tint?
this is the greenish tint, but
Yeah,
I'm
it's
wearing the
that.
untinted one from this morning's
Yeah,
skincare routine.
it's perfect.
Yeah,
So you
this
have
is a great
little
product.
red cheeks, you put it on there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mineral or chemical? Which do you personally reach for?
Well, you know that already, mineral.
Yeah. Most overrated skincare product.
Wow. I would say most overrated would be who? That's a tough one. I think some most overrated, oh, not a name, like a type, eye
Yeah.
cream.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my god. Eye cream is complete nonsense. But you know what's not nonsense? Eye cream with SPF.
It's perfect and they're out there and you don't need that much, but
Yeah.
I it's most of the time you're putting on something and you're always putting on something over it. You put a serum, then you put on your sunscreen after that, but always a serum underneath. I mean, I think a serum is the best thing to put on in the morning after you're done. You put on an ultralight serum with hyaluronic or something, and
Hmm.
then your sunscreen, boom, goes right on top of that.
Yeah, and I have dedicated like those like sunscreen sticks. I use those around my
Hmm.
eyes so that I don't have to worry
Those are
about migration.
Yeah, Elta makes them too.
Yeah.
And so does Tizzo makes those too. The
Hmm.
Olfalene, they make sticks because they sell a lot to estheticians and those type products. And they do a treatment, they put on a little stick quick under the eye, over the lid. It's unreal.
Yeah. Your dream place to test sunscreen formulations: the Bali Sun or the Arizona desert?
Arizona desert.
Oh wow. Well, I won't be meeting you there. I'm headed to Bali.
Oh, there you go. Now, Arizona desert, it would give you because it's so dry, it would be the test of the sunscreen for
Oh,
sure.
interesting. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. And Bali's
it would
probably too
totally be the
humid.
test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point. All right. If you could instantly reform FDA rules on one sunscreen ingredient, what would it be?
Levels of zinc oxide, I think,
Ah,
percentages.
to open that
Like,
open
don't
that up.
limit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't limit it. Let it be what it needs to be, and that's it.
What were the caps again for zinc and
I think
titanium?
zinc is 20 or 25 maybe now,
Hmm.
but I think you should be able to go, and I might be wrong, I'll have to look, but if you wanna make a 70% zinc oxide and it's transparent, do it.
Right. You heard it here first. All regulation aside, what would you make today if you could?
Um, all regulations aside, I'd probably still work with to me, texture is definitely important.
Hmm.
So I would probably, if I could, I would try to make a zinc oxide serum or a serum stick with zinc oxide. I think would be really cool. Like a softer stick goes on, especially for the cheeks, but almost like a clear stick would be really cool to do. I don't know if it's achievable because of the system, but
Right.
you never know.
You
It
never know
it
until
might
you
be the next
try.
product you see.
Yeah. You have a faithful tester right here.
Yes, you'll be the first.
Thanks, John. All right, this was incredible. Thank you so much for walking out with me on sunscreen. I loved this.
No, I appreciate it. It was a pleasure, and yeah, glad to chat about it. I always love talking about ingredients, but not like crazy ingredients, but things that are important to people for sure. And sunscreens to me are like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, John.
Wonderful. Hey, thank you.
Ciao.
Have a good one. All
You
right,
too.
bye.
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 All right. Thank you for listening to the Skin Karma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skin Karma blog at skinkarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.